This week on the Experience Curve podcast, I continue my conversation with the incredible Jim Capobianco. I read that you did this short Leonardo that's still in the MoMA in New York City, which I've been to a bunch of times, right? But obviously you're in this like whole world of Pixar and computer, generated animation, all that stuff. But this was more like almost like a hand-drawn style.
Yeah.
I think someone caught it at a film festival in Newport Beach down here in Southern California. But is that just your roots, in terms of how that film was made?
Yeah, I like I said, like my Mr. Schmaltz in that class, I always loved drawing animation. That's why I got into animation to do, then I learned about story. But I wanted to do that. I wanted to make Bugs Bunny cartoons and old Disney movies and stuff. Then I got into animation, and that really wasn't, nobody was making Bugs Bunny cartoons really and stuff. So, and I didn't expect computer animation to come along when I got into things. I mean, we saw a bit when we were at school, like Luxo Jr. and the early Pixar shorts were popping up, but it wasn't a thing yet. People weren't thinking it was going to take over all the stuff. I just love it. I've always loved it. That and the stop motion. We'll talk about that too. But it's like those handcrafted things. I was actually very thankful I was in story because I could just keep doing what I was doing. And for the longest time, we just drew on paper still and pitched it the old way. Even when we went to Pixar and they were doing computer animated films, it was still drawn on paper and all that. So it's really good. And actually, it wasn't until Ratatouille, and because of me, I introduced this way to pitch digitally because this guy Michael Johnson created a pitching program for Pete Docter, and it's called Pitch Doctor at Pixar. And you basically put your storyboards in it from like you'd scan your boards in, or you bring it in through Photoshop. You'd draw it in Photoshop, and you could pitch digitally. So now that's what it's done, and there's some other tools for it. But now, actually, like I was mentioning, storyboard artists draw way many drawings, and they basically animate the films, and I feel totally guilty and responsible for a lot of artists RSI. And I started pushing back against it at Pixar later on to like get artists to do less drawings because they didn't need to. And editors would get really upset too because they'd be like throwing out drawings. I don't need all these drawings. There's too much to deal with. And then the artists started putting camera moves, like drawing camera moves and all these other things. Like, oh my God, dudes, it's not about the story. You're doing other stuff. It's about pretty drawings and camera moves. And that's not developing a story. Because for me, storyboarding in animation is writing. There's script writing, which is a terrible form of cinema because it's all words on a page, and then you storyboarding, and the way it works in feature animation, the best way is it's maybe you get script pages, or like I said with Lion King, all I had was a paragraph, or you get a pitch, and you got to board it up. And the way they did it in the old days with Walt was were no scripts; they just storyboarded, and you'd write it, go to you get storyboards, you start writing in the storyboards and developing it further. Maybe it goes back to the writer, back to storyboarding, and you just keep this process, and it's writing visually. So with the Leonardo short, I started working on that because I wanted to make a short. I was like, I think it would be cool to make a short. And this was I actually started working on it before I left for Pixar and started developing it and figuring it out. And I was going to bring on my friends from Disney who were animators and stuff. And then they didn't want to, like, they were like, yeah, I'll do it. But then I found out they don't really want to work on animation after hours and weekends. That's what they did all week.
Right.
Plus, I wasn't really paying them anything. So,
yeah, well, there you go.
So I started animating like crappy scenes that they wouldn't want to animate. And then I didn't even think I could animate anymore because I studied it at school, but I hadn't done a ton of it. And then, I don't know, I started picking up more and more scenes because nobody else was doing them. And I ended up animating about 80% of that short. And I was impressed myself because I was like, holy shit, I actually could animate. And I think it was my story training that made me be able to animate better than I would have at school. Anyway, so it took 10 years to make, and then
Okay.
I showed it at the Newport, Rhode Island Film
Oh,
Festival,
okay.
which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. It was a very charming festival. But they had, again, I lucked out because they did a retrospective with the MoMA of like Popeye cartoons and like these refurbished cartoons they were doing, and so they showed a bunch of those, and so this MoMA group was there, and we got friendly, and I said, oh, they were like, why are you here? And I'm showing my short Leonardo, and they're like, oh, we'd love to see it. So they actually organized a special screening for the MoMA people because the timing wasn't working out, and they looked at it, and then they said, we'd love to put this in the museum. And I was like, what? And prior to that, Pixar had done something with the MoMA, like they had big exhibit. So there was a connection there with Pixar. So I have to thank that too. But yeah, so they wanted to. I was like, okay, wow, for sure. And so now I have permanent membership with MoMA, though I've never actually been
When you're in the
because I live
city.
here in California.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. No, like unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I mean, so like when you're sort of like there's a narrative for a short film or format, I guess, and then a
Hmm.
feature length. How does the creative process differ in those two, approaches to the film, to a film?
Well, I think the biggest difference is one's short.
Yeah, the duration.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I think the short, you can explore, like, one idea and just, like, massage it. I mean, you can it definitely has, like a small 3 act structure, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it's mainly yeah, it's like one kind of idea, I think is the best way, depending on how long the short is,
Mhm.
and I think generally, the shorter the short, the better the short. I had a film festival for a while, for about 12 years, children's film festival I programmed and ran, and, I love the shorter shorts because you could always and I tell this to everybody, anybody listening, if you wanna get a film into a film festival, make it short because as a programmer, you have all these longer if you have a really long short, it's really hard to put it into the program because it takes up so much space, but if you have these little shorts, you can always maybe find little spaces to put them in, and you can put them in front of a feature. You can make a shorts program where there's longer shorts, but then there's a little moment you could put the little shorts in. So shorter shorts are better. Plus, yeah, the longer the short, the start to get a little taxing for the
Yeah, sure.
viewers sometimes
Yeah.
because you can explore all sorts of things. It could just be like a very simple moment and in a short. Now, a feature, obviously, yeah, it has a lot of space to cover, and you really need to think about the dramatic narrative and how you'll carry the interest for the audience. Because a short, you could pretty much hold people's interest for about 8 minutes or so. They'll sit and watch it, but they're 6 minutes or so, and
Yeah.
but like a feature, they'll give you about that much time, 10 minutes into the first act before they'll go, what else is on? Or maybe we should watch something else. Or, oh, really? Is this going to start picking up? So I think you really have to think about how you're grabbing the audience and how that trajectory is going to carry on through the film. So it's just, obviously it's a bigger structure to build. But, and I think people think it's a lot of time, but it really isn't. It's kind of especially an animated film, which is 90 minutes generally it's it seems like a lot of time, but it's like I don't know, it's sort of like a cliff noted version of whatever you're trying to tell in some respects. Now, I've never done anything like streaming where you have like these multiple like long stories, which each one is a story and a story but building on each other. That must be interesting to create. So it seems like a lot of space to fill.
Yeah, well, amidst all this, right? So you created there's a company, the Aerial Contrivance Workshop, right? ACW,
Hmm.
which is,
Hmm.
a story design studio is what, that you have. Basically the creation of inspiring experiences to both entertain and inform. Like, can you walk through the inception of that? And, it's a commitment to innovative education through entertainment. Like, what is ACW all about? And obviously we'll jump into work you've done on big shows like Mary Poppins.
So yeah, I kind of created it for the short film, so I'd have like a little production thing under it just for the film. And then I didn't really do anything with it because I was at Pixar, so I really, then when I left Pixar, I was able to utilize that I have this company I'm paying things to for, so I might as well use it. So yeah, so it's what I've learned in the past by developing stories and films and things. It's just applying that to a company, and the idea of being able to develop stuff early on. And then the idea of the company is like story design. And this idea I have that you design, thinking of story as design instead of just words on a page or like a 3-act structure, but it's actually everything in it is designed to tell a story. Every image, your sets, the characters, the way they look, all of it is design elements. And so you need to think in terms of how those design elements tell your story. And I think it's also a way to kind of look at the way you can move through life and your careers, and as well, like how do you design, in a sense, yourself and your life, and kind of point yourself in a direction that you can do what you want to do. Generally, my way, and leaning into the arts for me, but I think other people could run with that for whatever they're doing. That was sort of the impetus of the idea of a story design. Yeah, it just came about because I needed something for the film, and then I was happy to have it after I left Pixar.
Yeah, and the people who saw the recent Mary Poppins, right? Mary Poppins Returns. There's this like iconic scene where the children and Mary Jack, they all enter this animated world of a painting, which is you're responsible for. I believe you got a second Annie Award in your career for this sequence, right?
Yes.
So like taking that scene just like for fun, like how did you kind of balance like the classic Disney feel, and then making that like like a fresh for a modern audience, putting that all together.
I really wanted, when I got the assignment to do it. So what happened was I left Pixar, and then I'm like, because I really wanted to start doing new things. And Pixar had started to get, in a way, at least for me, I wasn't able to push myself creatively like I was doing, like in that middle period with Ratatouille and You're from the Rat and stuff. And I kind of wanted to keep doing that, but then they put me back into storyboarding, and then I was like, oh, it's all right, but I kind of want to push myself more creatively because I had started to do that. I left to go do that. So, but I'm walking my dog, and I'm like, oh my God, is this the rest of my life walking the dog? Because I had nothing to do. So, but then I got a call from actually Pixar, from Jonas Rivera, who's the producer there and actually one of the heads of the company. He called me and he said, hey, we got this job that came through, but we can't do it because we don't do outside work. But I thought of you. So I went down with him and a bunch of Pixar story artists. We met Rob Marshall, and he told me it was Jonas told me it was Mary Poppins sequel, and I was like, why the hell are they making that? Oh my God, please don't. And he's like, yeah, that was my same reaction. But I don't know, maybe it'll be cool. Maybe we can make it cool. Maybe you can make it cool. And I was like, all right, let's go talk to Rob. Meet Rob, and Rob's first thing is like, let's look at the old version. And so we look at that, and then he said, well, what if we did it in this flatter style? And Jonas and I were like, well, you mean like 2D drawn animation? He's like, oh, is that what you call it?
You're like,
So,
I'm
I'm like,
listening.
yeah, that's how you have to do it. Because I didn't know if he'd want to do it in CG. It seems like everybody wants to do everything in computer animation because you get an extra dimension or something. So that was cool. And then we heard some of the songs, which actually those were the songs that didn't end up in the film. It's like the zoo song and stuff, but that Mark Shaman wrote. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. All right. Well, the songs and they want to do in 2D. Those are the two boxes I want to check. And Rob seemed really cool, and they were interested to do it. But I also realized they had no idea how to do it because it was weird because they weren't using Disney animation, and I was like, they're right across the street because we met in the Hyperion building, which was like really cool because it's the old building from the Hyperion lot, Disney, that they moved to the Burbank lot. So we're in that. So there's this history. We're like 10 yards from the soundstage where they shot the original Mary Poppins. So all that, and then so I realized they don't know how to make this. They're not using Disney animations for some weird reason because they went all CG. And I'm like, what? Then I think Rob was that way too. So I was like, okay, they don't know how to do this. I have to figure out But I told Jonas, I'm like, I can figure this out. And he's like, yeah, I knew you could. So then I met your wife, Mimi Steele, and she called me and said, okay, how are we going to do this? So we reached out to like a bunch of studios. And then I knew of the studio, Ken Duncan's studio in Pasadena from my old Disney days. I knew Ken. So we reached out to him. And what was cool about Ken's studios, he's like, we still animate on paper. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Really? I'm
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
awesome.
That's very cool.
So what we did was, and this is what I wanted to do, I was like, if I'm doing this, we're going to get as close as we can to the original version. That's the only way I'm doing this, because I have so much respect for that film and that what they did. That's the only way I'm going to operate. I'm not going to like cheese this out. So Ken being able to do it on paper was cool because that's close. Then we brought in obviously we couldn't bring in the old timers because most of them are gone.
Sure.
But we could bring in the next generation who some, learned from those guys and also like were the new Renaissance with Lion King dudes and all that stuff. So some of those people came out of retirement.
Wow.
We pulled them in. And so in that respect, we got as close as we could with the animators and drawing on paper to that original film. And it was really special. And it was cool working with Rob and going on set and live action sets and working with Emily and Lynn. And, that was pretty wild. Great experience.
Yeah, very successful film, at the end of the day too. So
Yeah, no, I was really pleased at how it came out. I wish it was more accepted, but
yeah. I mean, it's
a tough go against Mary Poppins or like to do a sequel to that film is that was a tall order. But I thought Rob pulled off a really nice film.
yeah. He seems to make really great films that are widely popular with people. So everyone kind of did a great job on that one. So
But we approached the story, everything the way we would do a feature or anything else. It was all done the same way, doing the animation sequence.
oh, okay. So when you get that right, because there's a lot of other stuff you do that people listening, it would be like where you have the time, like you have like this whole line of children's books, right? You have
Oh, right.
you have an illustrator that you work with, Anna Cantone.
Anna Laura Cantone.
Obviously in the midst of everything you're doing, you're writing these books, right? Children's books, but like when you're crafting a story for a book versus obviously the filmmaking you're doing, like is there something that maybe you find just rewarding in bringing these narratives to life in the children's
Yeah.
books, like your film? You had a film festival obviously that's centered around children's as well.
Well, I always approach even the film festival. I approach it as like, what do I want to see? What would I want? So like even Leonardo short was like, I've never seen a film about Leonardo da Vinci animated film. So maybe a live action film, but definitely an animated film. So I was like, I want to see that. So I'm like, well, I guess I have the power to make it, at least try. So that's what I did. And so the same with the books. I'm like, well, what kind of children's book would I like to see or would be fun to write or make me laugh or make my children like I like to read into my children to be, kind of that vein. Actually just finished writing it's not done. I just did a first draft, but a book that's kind of like a Roald Dahl book because I love his writing, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And that I'm sending off my agent. So hopefully that will get published at some point. But so basically it's like, well, what do I want to see? It makes me excited. So even like Mary Poppins was the same way. Like I'm like only going to make this if it's like something I would want to see.
Yeah.
And which is, I have a high bar. So I'm like, like I've been mentioning, I really want to push the boundaries and do things in new ways. So it's like, he's not radical, but I want to do things that make me keep wanting to see these things and would want to buy it or experience it or something. So, and I figure if I like it, generally a lot of other people would as well. So that's kind of how I approach everything. Even the film festivals, like what would I put in a film festival? I've been to a lot of film festivals and I'm like, why the hell did they put that movie in there? I didn't want people reacting that way. And I would get a lot of compliments that people were like, "Well, I really like your program." So I felt like vindicated there. I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. So I think that's just how I approach it. Simply, what do I want to see? And it's kind of what we did at Pixar too. It was like, what movies do we want to make? What movies do we want to see? That's why they appeal to all audiences.
Yeah. Yeah, very broad. It's very hard to find someone that's like, "Oh, I hated that Toy Story movie." It's
Right, exactly.
so beyond that, right? You're also you've let voiceover work you've done for like
Yeah,
including like so there's
that's just fun.
yeah, yeah. So, but is that just for fun, like because you like to be, were you ever like into acting, or do you just like this Netflix show, Go Corey Carson? Like, does that the filmmaking side, the animation side, does that influence what you do performance wise, or is this just someone asked you and you just like, hey, why not? It'll be fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, for certain, I mean, on Bug's Life, they asked me to do just an incidental bug, and Lee Unkrich was recording me, and I was so bad, like just nervous, and it's terrible. And he was like, "Okay, thanks." He thought you because I have this like deep voice. I never thought I would do voice work, and then on Your Friend the Rat, Brad was like, "There's a director in it," and I'm like, "Well, who am I going to cast for the director?" And Brad's like, "You just do it. You're the director." Okay, so I did it. And then I don't know, then I started doing like other little incidental voices and like on Go Corey Carson, the friends I had who made that, they were like, "Well, we just like your voice. We want to have you try out for it." And so I did it, and they were like, "You have such a sincerity in your voice. You're not like a creepy guy." Because he was like this adult talking to children, and they didn't want him to be like creepy.
Right. Oh, yeah, makes sense.
So anyway, so then I don't know, I just started doing it and now I enjoy it. I really find it a lot of fun. And I think it's because I've been directing actors doing it and I can kind of see what you need to do as an actor for it and directing them. And so when I do it, I go, okay, I understand what I would need as a director. So I will give them what they need, which is usually a variety. Listen to what the response is, go back in, give them again a bunch of variety, try to hit it, but play around with it, and they'll hopefully be good at the directing will be good enough to like steer you where they need you. To me, it's just fun. I would love to do more of it. I just have a blast doing it. So, and then it becomes like on Your Friend the Rat, we didn't have to go hire another actor.
Sure.
I did it.
Yeah.
They didn't pay me extra to do the voice. So, and on the feature on the Inventor, it was like, we need a voice for like this one character which we hadn't cast. I'm like, well, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
And I would just use the recording time we had, like finished with Steve and Fry.
Uh-huh.
We still had a few minutes. I'm like, all right, I'll jump in and do the physician's voice. And then I would just just do it. And it was like, okay, we didn't have to buy more recording time. We didn't have to fire another actor, and stuff like that. So
It keep the budget in mind, right? So yeah, and
yes.
this film, right? The Inventor, like that, that was sort of my next question. We just watched it. We had a great time watching
Oh,
the
thank you.
film, and visually, it's very cool to see. Just from what's and for people listening, I mean, I watched it on Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu, like you said, Stephen Fry, other great actors in there, but so like it takes this stop motion and some 2D, right, in the film.
Yeah.
What's the process of like this stop motion, like when you're making this on like a feature level? Like, is it harder, easy? And not that either are easy, but the process behind it, is it a more challenging one for you, or is it just more of an enjoyable one?
Oh, well, all of the above. I mean, because I had worked on, we had a little bit of stop motion, Your Friend the Rat. We did a little teaser to help sell the film. It took 10 years to like raise the money and find the
Mhm.
partners. And so during that time, we made a little teaser, and I wanted to make that look just like the film would look like. So we brought in a real cinematographer who had worked in stop motion, Peter Sword. Tim Hiddle, who's a great animator from Nightmare Before Christmas, animated it. And so that was my first real experience with directing stop motion and seeing how it worked and the peculiarities of it and the specialness of it. And then going into the feature, I was like, I mean, even deciding this film would be stop motion was kind of like I don't know how to do stop motion, but I think that would be neat. So, and also 2D was kind of going away. It was all CG, and I didn't want it to be in CG. I thought it would be, it's a Da Vinci film. It needs to be
Mm.
handcrafted. So, but I knew we'd hire people who knew what they were doing, and we did. I mean, we had Pierre-Luc Grandjean, who's my co-director. I'd looked at his films as inspiration, never knowing I'd ever meet him or he'd be my co-director. I just liked his movies. Even showed him in my film
Oh,
festival.
very cool.
Then I meet him because the studio we're working with, Folioscope, Pierre Luc's worked with them.
Ah,
So it just all came together that way. And he was great because he told me, and we were like, because I looked at his movies, we had the same sensibilities, and so we were like two lost brothers. It was perfect. He could, he knew what to do with the stop motion. I knew what I wanted for the story, the feel of it, and all that. And he would set up the shot and go, "What do you think?" I would say, "Okay, we move the camera this way a little bit and do this," and we discuss it. But he did the nuts and bolts of it, and I did the kind of bigger view of it. And so that partnership worked really well. And through that, I learned a lot about stop motion, what was easy to do, what's hard to do. And then I would see our great line producer, Kat, who planned out the whole thing, Kat Aliocean, who goes all the way back to Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach stuff. She was the only other American.
yeah, it was France, right?
Yeah, it was all made in France. Other than our composer, who was also
Mm.
American, Alex. So she did this beautiful board of like weeks ahead of like where the scenes would be. And I would look at it and go, oh my God, okay, this coming up is going to be really difficult. I learned this from
Okay.
Pierre-Luc. I would rethink it and then go pitch it to Pierre-Luc and go, what do you think? I rethought it, do it this way. He'd always get afraid of me because I'd be like, come up and go, hey, I got a new idea. And he'd be like, thinking I'm going to make it more complicated. And then I would make it less complicated. And he'd be like, I love it. But I'd make it less complicated,
Right.
but better. That was my whole thing, is like, I'm not going to make it less complicated just to be less complicated. It has to be less complicated, but in a way that makes the film richer in some way or interesting in some way or something. So maybe tell that moment in just a little different way and maybe more interesting. So that was always my bar to do that. So anyway, I learned a lot, and then I was able to put it in there. So, but approaching it and developing it was no different than any of the other films I had done. Had a long lead time to do that, and it was great to rewrite the script and get it all ready. And then, and putting 2D in it too. I was all like what I'd done before. So again, mixing things up. I love doing that.
Yeah, we liked. I mean, even, the songs were good. I think like we talked offline a little bit. I felt now that I'm listening to everything you're saying and the stories and Pixar and the behind the scenes, and it does feel like, in a way, 'cause I did say this to you before you even told me, it does have an appeal that it could be anyone from a child to an adult can gain an enjoyable viewing experience from seeing this movie. So that's what I think. I told you straight off, like, oh, sometimes you see these, it's gonna be for kids, it's just gonna be for age 12 and under, whatever. But this just had like a very broad appeal, and I really like how, again, I think this was a continuation of your short, right, at MoMA,
Yeah, yeah. In a way, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not
to a
really like,
degree. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's the same character
yeah,
in
right.
the short, only
1500s,
higher.
he
It's
hasn't
like
changed. Yeah.
designed the same way. He looks the same odd way he does in the short, with a Eminem head and like dot
Right.
eyes and all that stuff.
You could just tell a lot was put into to all aspects, including the music.
Yes, and I worked with Alex Mandel, who was my composer on Your Friend the Rat. That's where we
Mm,
first kind of met. And I knew Alex was really versatile because on Your Friend the Rat, it like moves from all these different, because it goes through the history and different time periods in China and like Middle Ages and stuff. So he had to switch music all the time. So I knew he was really versatile, and we worked on this, like I told, 10 years. I mean, he came on, it was exactly 10 years, but it was years of him and I working together on the music, themes and all this stuff. And eventually I was like, let's put up, there's this moment he builds his workshop. I didn't want it to be like bringing in stuff and them just like putting it on the table and like, moving in. I wanted it to be kind of a special moment. So it's treated like a blank canvas.
sure.
and the building assembles around him, the workshop assembles around him. And it felt very musical to me. So I said, well, what if we throw in a song here? Like make it kind of a musical moment. And I love like, it's got a kind of a look like Rankin and Bass and inspiration from all those old Hollywood, not Hollywood, holiday films that, and they always had songs in them. So I don't know. I felt like, well, it's stop motion. Nightmare Before Christmas has songs. So well, let's put a song in here. And then it was just going to be this one song. But then somebody who was talking to Alex was like, well, how do you should have a song earlier to say there's going to be a song later, because all of a sudden a song shows up. It's kind of weird. Someone was like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, maybe the Pope has a song. That would be funny. So we gave the Pope a little song, and then this thing, and then it just starts snowballing, and it's like, what if we had this moment? This one. So eventually, there's 9 songs in it. It's not really a musical, though. It's not structured like a musical. It's kind of more like a Pinocchio, Disney's Pinocchio. I never think of that as like a musical, but it's an animated film with songs in it.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how this is, the way I look at it. It's just not, it doesn't have that kind of Broadway sound, and it doesn't have the structure a musical has with their songs. It's kind of, they're kind of in there randomly.
Yeah, no, it's more complimentary. Like it's it's just very pretty guitar. It's not like this. Everyone's dancing and
Yeah.
it's
We
it's very
wanted it to, I said, if it could come out of a source in the film, like you see somebody playing a lute. It's not like they break out into song. It's like you can almost think of it like they were like, well, let's have a moment where we're gonna, and Leonardo was very, the real Leonardo, the real Leonardo da Vinci was very musical. He created his own instruments. He'd make instruments for other people. He supposedly had a very beautiful voice. Obviously, like everything else about that guy could do
yeah,
no wrong. So
yeah.
yeah, so it didn't seem like too much of a stretch to put music songs in it like that.
No, it was. I definitely, we enjoyed it a lot. So I'm
Oh,
glad
I'm
we got
glad to
to.
hear that. That's cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Do you think though, like we talked earlier on in this show, like hearing stories from your family, your grandparents, right, being at the adults table, do you think that sort of Italian roots had maybe an influence on projects that you're choosing, that maybe Da Vinci, whatever it might be, that kind of play out in your creativity?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, it's with Leonardo da Vinci. Before I made the short, I mean, I knew of him, looked
Mhm.
at books. I appreciated like who he was, but I didn't really know like what I know now about him, because by doing the
Sure.
short, I read like everything I could, and like Pixar, Disney to some extent, like research is like key to developing these films. Like
Hmm.
really diving in, like Your Friend the Rat came out of research on rats. So I would just went dived in, even though I was making like an 8-minute short. It was like, I'm gonna learn what I can about this guy. And then obviously going into the feature, I like delved back into it and tried to tease out as much as I could. So that's what made me appreciate Leonardo da Vinci more than my Italian upbringing. But I mean, maybe like I've always had an affinity to Europe, and
Hmm.
I mean, and the films I've worked on, like Ratatouille. I mean, weirdly, France has been like a really big thing in my career. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Ratatouille, working in France on this and stuff. So it's been interesting because, and then like Jan and I working on Ratatouille together, Ratatouille was labeled the European film because
Mm,
Jan was from Czechoslovakia originally, but grew up in England. And so
okay.
he was like, the film with European sensibility is what it was referred to.
Oh, okay.
And
That's fun.
so I had this sensibility to an extent, even being an American, that had this feel. I loved like Truffaut films and Jacques Tati and even Italian films, Fellini and these films. So it's like I have a like I was mentioning Sandy McKendrick, so English films, and so I really appreciate those films. I'm not just watching like American like big blockbuster films and stuff. I'm really looking at art house films and then the stuff from Europe, even prior to working on Ratatouille and everything. So I think I've always had this affinity to Europe and not necessarily just Italy, but of course I appreciate
Sure.
Italy and my
Oh,
heritage.
yeah. No, and not to give away much about the film, but there is, he does travel, right, from country to to so France
Leaves
does play
Italy,
a part.
escapes, runs away.
Yeah.
That's why we couldn't. It was really hard to set it up in Italy. We had for a while we had an Italian producer helping us out,
Okay.
which was great. But then we could never get anywhere because the Italians don't want to. They want to like they don't want people to know he left Italy. So
Okay.
they don't like the fact that he went moved to France at the end of
Yeah,
it.
he definitely jumped ship, crossed over the line.
To me, Da Vinci though he belongs to the world, so I think it's not
Sure.
fair to say. I mean, they should appreciate. Obviously they adore and high regard for Leonardo in Italy, and it's very special to them as it should be. But also, I think they need to make sure they're sharing it with the world. So for me, going to France was perfect, and we're making it in France, which was never a done deal. It was never like totally written in the stars. Was that we would make it in France because it's actually a tough animation market to get
Hmm.
into to make.
Okay.
They're like of Europe, they're the biggest like animation market and like studios and everything. So we really needed to find somebody in France who would embrace the film. So that wasn't a done deal until we met Ilanya Rose at Folioscope, which really was the moment that everything happened. Like once that meeting, Elon, and he said, I want to make this. We went to a thing called Cartoon Movie where we pitched it. And I was like the first American and this Pixar guy to come to pitch there. And they're like, well, why don't you making it like a Pixar in Hollywood or something? Like, well, nobody will make it there. So here. And then I had to kind of really, talk about Ratatouille and like push my sort of everything I just said about European films and French films to them to kind of sell myself as like why I would think it would be great to make it in France, which it was true. And the artistry there in France is amazing, and their love of animation is tremendous. And I just thought, wow, this is special. It's about him being in France, and we made it in France, and it was so right, and so it was perfect.
So, like, looking forward in technology, and everyone talks about AI, and but the future of like storytelling in the world of animation, like, how do you see that evolving? Whether AI is going to play a part, sooner later, large, small, even at your company ACW. Like, how do you see technology going forward?
I don't really know how AI is going to fit into all this stuff. I'm terrified of AI.
Hmm.
I think like a lot of people. I mean,
Sure.
I'm worried about it taking jobs away from graphic artists and advertisement artists, and I
Hmm.
think those will be the first ones hit hard. But I mean, as far as stop motion, it'll be. I don't think it'll take
Yeah.
care of that one. So unless you got
You're set
robots
there. Yeah.
doing it. But as far as the storytelling, I mean, I'm totally on with the Writers Guild. I'm not part of the guild, but I
Yeah.
totally am like support that. I'm glad they went on strike about that and stuff. So that's great.
Yeah. Or just how you see like just the future of storytelling. Do you find it to be like for you short form content? Is that something you're going to want to push more into, or do you like, okay, now I'm like directing, I want to direct more features, and how you might, do you want to try to keep this 2D stop motion? Not that it's like a signature for you, but you're good at it, right? So, and you seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do those forms because I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I did, it's not that I wouldn't do a CG film. It might be interesting because I've never actually directed it, or I don't really know how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I worked at Pixar, and we had a bit of CG on Your Friend the Rat, but it's like a whole other language to me.
Hmm.
But it's not like I wouldn't do it. But I love the handcrafted forms, like again, because I that's what I wanted to do going into animation. So for me, the future in general for animation, I think is really cool in the sense of the storytelling because we have so many new voices that are given the option now to express themselves that we haven't had before. So we have so many more women involved and different ethnicities and people with different persuasions and everything. So the storytelling, like I've always wanted it to go, is going to start breaking out really big. And I also think there's an appetite out there for more adult content. And I
Hmm.
don't mean like X rated or like R rated and stuff. I just mean like storytelling that's more sophisticated and in a way would appeal more to adults, and maybe it is kind of R-rated, maybe it has gunfights in it, or it's like an action film or a murder thing or murder mystery or something has blood and guts in it. I don't know, crimes,
Yeah.
novel crime story, but not like a fox and a rabbit trying to solve a crime, which is okay, but more like, a hard boiled like detective and things
Sure.
like that. So, I think you see it on TV. I mean,
Mhm.
Adult Swim, and then, I mean, all these programs that are on TV that are more skewed to adults. I mean, for animation, and you have, and then the whole anime world has all been adult for a lot of it for a while. So, and this generation, our generation coming up, have all grown up with that stuff and graphic novels and all these things. And so all of that's happening now. And so this is the new world, and that's going to be the new features. So, I mean, if there's studios out there, they should really start embracing this because
Yeah.
it's going to be going. And I think, I mean, something like Nimona that was out last year it's kind of for kids, but it's for older kids. It's like in a teen realm. So
Mhm.
I think it's, it's starting to break, and I think it's really exciting. And people are starting to move out of also just the Pixar look that's been in CG for so long, which was great at the time, and people are figuring it out. But now you're starting to see more excitement with the artistry as well. So you have Spider Verse, which like
Mhm.
just blows it open. Like Nimona, I mentioned, has a different look. Like they're really places are really trying to push now into new directions. So that's really exciting too. So I think it's a great time for animation, and there's so many different avenues and places making it and schools teaching it and stuff online to learn about it. None of it I had. So, and like I said, when I was peddling my portfolio around, there was Disney, Don Bluth, and like a handful of TV places, and that was it. So, so it's just super exciting right now. So for me, then I just want to keep creating interesting projects, and whether that's doing animation like Mary Poppins that's within a live action feature or something, or making another feature would be fantastic. Doing shorter forms, a little TV thing. I don't know. I'm open to whatever is interesting to do, but yet again, it has to fit into that sort of view I have of like trying to push some boundaries, even through story, having fun with it, what I want to see, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So for you for projects, I mean, you're just kind of going around the world with the Inventor.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much consumed a lot of time, the PR, and we're doing the awards push right now. So it's all been a lot of work because we are a super independent film.
Mhm.
We don't have like a studio behind us, like, really with the marketing power of we have no marketing power. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really, me telling friends and friends telling friends, and like doing things like this podcast, and
Yeah.
like just really trying to get the word out for whoever is out there who sees it and goes, well, this sounds like an interesting movie to check out. So even for like the awards, we're like trying to like just tell people it's up for award.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that's the hardest thing. I mean, it's on VOD now, like you mentioned, to rent and buy, but even that is cool, but like nobody knows it is. So you have to know it's there to ask
Mhm.
for it on your TV to the Inventor, and then it comes up rent or buy, and you're like, damn it, why isn't it on one of my streaming services that I pay so much for? This is what I do every time. So, but I don't know what if we'll get streaming or what. So that's where it is right now, and it's about to release in Europe, which will be very exciting. So that in France in the 29th of January, England it's the 7th of March. Other countries is also like in January, February, March. Like it's starting to roll out next year in Europe, which will be really cool to see how it plays there out there. So
Oh yeah. Well, that's how we did. For us, we it's just like $5 to rent or $10 to buy. I mean, it's not like it's, anything that's crazy. So I think it was worth it, but if you're going to, for going to Europe and you're going to hit festivals or just like a PR push, like you said, this is all prior to Academy Awards, or does this go till a certain time?
Well, academies now. I mean, right now we're approaching the
Right.
nomination season, so everybody's looking at the
Yeah.
stuff now, and then we'll start nominating. Oh, in this
Gotcha.
January, I think is the beginning of nominations, the 11th or something, and then it goes for like a month. Yeah, well, the 11th is when the nominations come out, so we will nominate. Yeah, prior to that.
Yeah. Well, so for people who want to follow what you're doing, or obviously the film, The Inventor, we said like Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu. How about following you? Like your what social or your website that places that you're most active for people to learn more about, just following your journey.
So you can go for the film, you can go to theinventorfilm.com and you can learn about the film and also link you to all these platforms and stuff to see it. Also, there's like news, so we'll update it for Europe and all the screenings. Any special screenings too that we do that people want to see it on the big screen. Then for me, there's my website for the company Contrivance.com. For me, I have a jimcapobianco.com. So it's
Yeah.
pretty easy. And then my socials, I'm on Instagram and I'm posting generally on Instagram. I post nothing about me, just about the film. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. You can see like videos and photos and storyboards I put on there, and I keep putting more stuff on. So it's kind of my way of like trying to get it out there. Also, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And Facebook. No, I don't do X. I killed that Twitter account a while ago. Everybody should. And then, yeah, so it's Instagram for me, Facebook still, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll throw all the links into the show notes for people who, stream this on their, podcasting platforms. They can just click them and check out what you're doing and be able to follow your
Yeah.
journey. But yeah, dude, this was amazing. Like learning so much history in animation, and you're still like a young guy. So it's like there's still I can't imagine like how much more you have to do. It's very exciting. I'm glad you're actually, The Inventor. We loved it. I highly recommend everyone check it out because you're supporting like a great guy and all this work you're putting into it. So
Yeah, you're supporting independent filmmaking, which is pretty cool.
well, exactly, right? So I mean, it's like you got to just support the art that's out there and give it the voice and the platform that you're trying to get to, and it's to me it's totally worth checking out because we genuinely loved it. I thought it was something that appeals to, like I said, all age groups. It's just a well-made production, which is I appreciated the most. But for your time today too, thank you for just sharing so much and just giving people an idea of like what it's like truly what it's like behind the scenes and your whole trajectory and for what you have here. I'm a fan, so I can't wait to see what you do next, and hope to sit down with you in person one day and grab a coffee or something.
You bet. Sure, sure.
Have a great rest of your day, and thank you again for doing the show.
Thank you, Joe. It was a real pleasure. It was like I'm exhausted. We went through so much. Like I said, I could just keep talking, so it's terrible. And everybody likes talking about themselves, I guess. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. It was great questions and it was fun.
Okay, thanks again, Jim. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.